All right, so we are at the point where we need to actually assemble our box. So of course, I'm going to begin by getting out all of my materials, and then I'm going to scratch and score and slip my sides together. All right, I'm starting with just 2 of my pieces here, and you can see I still have this indication at the bottom, little mark I made knowing the direction of the piece. So my design is traced on the front. I want to make sure this part is going up. So that's why I've got this little mark down here. So I can know which is the top of my panels and which is the bottom. So to connect my seams, when we connect them together, it's going to go just like this. And then we will have a nice secure attachment. So with my slabs, I'm just gonna create some some score marks. Obviously, I want to be making sure that I'm going to get that really firm connection with the sides. So I'm really making sure that I'm adding them abundantly. There's enough of them. I'm going in all sorts of different directions too, not just one direction. I'm actually going to do this side too while I'm at it. Using my needle tool for this because it can really make those lines in the clay quite nicely. I like to go sometimes in 2 directions first to make kind of a cross-hatching pattern, and then I like to go back and add some extra random strokes. If your needle tool gets dirty while you're doing this, I like to just throw this in my slip to make more slip as I go. All right, and then we've got both edges all scored. And I only scored both sides right now just because once we connect these two together, it would be harder to score these edges that are going to connect to the rest of our sides a little later on. So I'm thinking about the whole process as I'm going. All right, so I can find my little indicators again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this edge to this edge. That way my design will be on the outside. And I want to be careful as I'm doing this to do it really neatly, do my best job that I can. And I want to really pay close and careful attention to how I am actually connecting these two. Using either my finger or a brush, I'm going to get some of my slip and apply it to the seam that I created. It's basically acting like our clay glue. Slip is just a mixture of clay and water. I'm going to apply it to both sides here, just so I can really get a nice connection. Sometimes after you apply slip, I like to go through and again, make sure that these two sides are going to come together now and rescore them. So they've got positive and negative space so they can fit together like a puzzle piece. And then I'm going to take my walls and tilt them up. For me, my cardboard slabs are quite stiff already. You can see that as I'm tilting them. And the cardboard is sort of just falling off and sitting on the table. If your cardboard is still attached, that's totally fine. It can actually be a good way to help you keep your slabs straight if they are not already at the leather hard stage where they're holding themselves together. So I'm just visually lining up my corner. I want a nice 90-degree angle. I'm using my hands to press this seam together really firmly. And I'm actually going to take my cardboard and lean it up against here just because it's a good protection for my design as I'm working. And then to really make this seam stick together, we're both going to go over the outside of the seam a little later on when we're cleaning up our box, but I also want to add a coil in here. And I actually have these little pieces that I was cutting off from the bevels. I can take these and I can just roll them out ever so slightly so they're nice and round. It's also going to make it thinner and easier to work in here. All right, so I've got a coil. I'll take my slip, apply it to the seam, so my coil will stick. The first coil is obviously going to be the easiest to apply since we don't have other box sides right here and on the other side yet. All right, I'm going to sort of feed my coil into the corner. I'll tilt it on its side so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just pressing it with my finger. You can also smooth it with a tool. Your fingers are some really good tools though, so don't underestimate how much you can do with your fingers. And you would do this working vertically. We don't want to distort the slabs, and one of the best ways to guarantee that we don't distort them is keeping it vertical as we're building it. I was just holding it on its side so you could see what I'm doing. I'm actually going to apply a tiny bit of slip right there. Sort of use my coil to close off this corner. I would go back and then refine this seam, maybe even right now with a wooden modeling tool. So the round edge of the wooden modeling tool can be really effective at blending it in. We want to get a good strong connection so that it doesn't break or crack in the kiln when it gets fired. So I'm really being careful. And you can see, obviously, when it's blended, it looks nice and secure. So I'm going to attach the rest of my sides just like this. I'm keeping my box vertical while I'm working on it. I'm looking at it visually, making sure this is a 90-degree angle. My next side is right here. I've already scratched and scored it. So I could even test it if I'm not sure if there's a little bit of imperfection in my slabs. If one of them is a little shorter versus taller, which of these it would fit onto better. All right, so that seems like that's going to come together really nicely. So I'm going to attach it to this side. And my cardboard is just kind of coming off, but it's not really that big of a deal. It's really, really important that you're working with your box while it's vertical, so you're not putting undue stress and tension on this very new seam that we've just created. So working with it while it's vertical is the best way to preserve it and keep it so we're not going to create warping. All right, so I've scored and applied slip to both sides. And I can go in, and I'm really supporting both sides of the box as I close this seam. I want to make sure I'm applying even pressure. And then I don't want to forget to add my coil. It really seems like these are just not wanting to stay. So I'm going to roll out my coil. Rolling it out right here. It doesn't have to be a big coil to do the job. I'm going to apply some slip. Fit the coil in with my finger. And then I would also want to really secure it with a wooden modeling tool. So I think if I turn my box this way, you can see the coil. I'm going to come in with this round edge and begin to smooth it. You can also do this gradually. You don't have to use a lot of pressure. All right, and we have one more side to attach. I'm going to score it and then we'll attach it. So I've scratched and applied slip, scored and slipped this side, my final side of my box. I'm going to be very careful as I fit it into these two sides, which I have also applied score marks and clay slip to. And it's fitting together quite well. The last thing I'll need to do is I'll need to add 2 coils right here, or 1 coil right here and another coil right here. So I'm going to roll out those coils. This clay is quite dry. I'm going to try a thicker one, or I could spray these down. And I'm going to apply some slip so the coil will stick. Oopsie. All right, I've got it shiny with slip. Now I'm going to get my coils. Spraying them down makes them much more pliable and not breaking now, so that's really convenient for me. And I'm going to attach this coil and blend it out just like I did with the other two. Obviously, I still want to keep working with it upright so that I don't distort any of my nice work that I've just done. I want to keep my slabs nice and straight. So I'll apply a coil, my last coil here and here. One quick tip as you're blending the coils, really make sure either if you still have your cardboard sides or if you don't, that you're supporting the outside of your box as you're pressing against it. These seams are still very fragile. So I'm using my other hand, my left hand in this case, to support the outside of the box as I smooth the inside of the box. Using 2 hands while we're working on this project is super important. We're going to be doing this as well when we begin to cut our design through. It's going to be very critical that you support the part of your box, the other side, as you're working on one side. So right now I'm working on the inside, so I want to support the outside. True again when I blend this coil. So my hands move to where I'm working, so I can balance out the pressure that I'm adding. I've even sort of extended my coil to go over the top edge of my box so that it's a super, super, super smooth connection. All right, so I've got my 4 box sides together. And now obviously I need a bottom of my candle votive holder. So I'm going to roll out another slab and let's make the bottom of this. So the same things we did with our first slab, we want to do with this one. So we want to roll it out to the same thickness so our box is consistent. We also want to be burnishing it with our metal rib. As we're rolling our slab, we can be rotating it so that we can keep it nice and even and feel where the thick or thin spots are if they are developing. And you can, if it's extra thick, you can roll more there. If it's thin, find a thicker spot and roll more on the thicker spots so that we can get a nice even slab. Don't forget to use a clean rib tool to compress your slab and burnish it. This can be a good way also to check how thick your slab is, because as you're working on it, you can sort of feel for thin spots, feel for thick spots. And we do want to do this on both sides really thoroughly, not just on one side. Craftsmanship counts, so we really want to take our time to do the process correctly the first time. All right, so I've got my template for the bottom of my box. It's the same width as my box here. Just to be on the safe side, I'm going to use a ruler and trim it to be ever so slightly larger, as I can always make this, it seems like I'm going to measure the template. So if my bottom of my box is 4 inches by 4 inches, that's how wide I should cut the bottom to be. So we are going to make it the same size that it correctly should be. I'm using a ruler so I can get nice straight even lines. All right. So this slab is obviously pretty soft. It's not as hard as the rest of my box. However, it is on the bottom, so it shouldn't cause too much of an issue. Then to attach it, I'm going to take my box and I want to make sure I attach it correctly. So right now, if my box is right side up, I want to flip it over so I can attach the bottom of the box to the bottom of the candle holder. And we've attached things before, so we're going to slip and score and go from there. All right, so I've applied my score marks and my slip. I'm going to very, very carefully line up my box with the bottom. And then I don't want to distort any of the panels, but I can apply an even pressure with my hands down from the top. And I also want to, you can see our box is attached. I want to add a coil along the inside here and smooth it out. All right, I've got a nice long coil here, much longer than I actually need it to be. And I'm going to apply some slip along the bottom of my box. This should feel similar to how you assembled your mug. If you didn't get a chance to practice these skills with your mug, they are essential clay building skills, so you'll get a chance to learn them now. And then as I'm using my coil down here, if my hand doesn't fit easily, you can also use tools. In my case, my box is wide enough that my hand can easily get down in here to apply the coil. All right, my coil actually broke, so I need to go get the rest of it for that last little 1-inch segment right there. All right, there we go. And now I would really want to spend some time and refine and smooth this edge. I might start with my finger, notice my other hand supporting this bottom edge so I don't accidentally bow that edge out or press it out in case the clay is still soft. I'm starting with my finger. I think I'll finish with a wooden tool because I find that really makes a nice smooth edge. But your finger is nice and soft. It's a really good way to start the box. So now I'm going in with my wooden modeling tool, smoothing this edge. And I would keep smoothing until the inside looks really nice. Next time we'll work on beginning to smooth the outside corners and edges and make the outside of our box look as nice as we're going to make the inside right now. After I've smoothed all of the inside edges and they look really nice and I can't see the original seam anymore. The joints are really nicely done. It's going to be critical to bag up our clay so it does not dry out. So we really want to make sure it is well bagged, that you're preserving it every single time. This project does take our class some tenacity to finish it. So we want to make sure our clay, we are managing well, bagging it as we need to. So I'm going to bag this clay up at this point.